Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Direct Booking Success Podcast. I'm Jenn Boyles, your host, and today I have Brianne Hamilton with me. Now, Brianne is the co owner of Junction House Property Management Company in Ontario, Canada. Welcome, Brianne.
Hello, thanks, Jen. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, it's great. Let's start with you telling us a bit about who you are and what you do.
Absolutely. So, myself and my husband, Doug, started Junction House Properties and Junction House Getaways about 4 or 5 years ago now. So, we originally started more as investors. So, buying, properties, doing renos on them, getting them rented in the long term rental market here in Ontario. But after a couple of years of doing that, the hype of short-term rentals started to come out, and we thought, "Hey, we have a couple of properties that would be well suited for short-term rentals." And in Ontario, the landlord-tenant rules are quite strict, so it's not always in your favor to have long-term rentals. So we started looking really more seriously into short-term rentals and turned a couple of our own properties into that type of property and absolutely just fell in love with the whole process from start to finish. We both have always loved traveling and just the hospitality side of it mixed with, real estate investing and design. It's kind of, basically like our dream come true, finding this kind of like niche in the real estate investing world. So from then we really just dove, all in and have now got to the point where we are co-hosting and managing for other owners. So we've really built out our own property management and hosting business, which we absolutely love. And we've spread out across Ontario. We're in Nova Scotia. And also we've done some properties in the US. So I think that there's really no borders when it comes to this type of work, which is great.
Yeah, so whereabouts
Mhm.
in the States have you expanded to?
So we've managed some properties in Arizona and also now in Florida, where we have a couple coming up.
Great. Oh my
Mhm.
goodness. So how many properties are you looking after on in total?
So in total, we have just over 20. I think we're at 22 now. And then we have our pipeline is growing every day. So again, probably another 10 or 12 in there that we're hoping to get launched in the next 6 months or so.
Wow. Okay,
Mhm.
you're on a real growth spurt right now.
Yes, we are.
And you told me 20% direct bookings, which is brilliant. And I wanted to ask, because when I talk to people who've come from the investment side of things, sometimes direct bookings is a bit of a leap because they're I don't know how to say this, but you know, they're driven by Airbnb and Booking.com and Verbo and think that that's good enough for a return. So what made you get into direct bookings for your portfolio?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think that's a very good insight that a lot of people just gravitate towards the popular channels. For myself, so my background before this in the corporate world was communications and marketing. So to me, it was almost just like a no brainer. It's like, why wouldn't I just market our properties ourselves and, use that money we would have given away to the channels to pay for, some marketing of our own. So to me, it was just a natural kind of like, of course, I'm going to do this. And yeah, so last year, as you said, we had 20% direct, which was amazing. With, obviously there was some marketing behind it, but it wasn't pushed as much as we probably can and are looking to do going forward.
And what are the plans this year?
So as we've obviously been growing and continuing to grow, we really want to ensure that everything under our management is as optimized and out there as it can be. So we really do look at each property and almost give it its own kind of brand and avatar, if you will. So we can make sure we're attracting the right type of guests, for that property. So I know we didn't get into a lot of the various things we manage, but like we have everything from bunkies to Sleeps 12 beautiful cottages in Muskoka area of Ontario. So we have a wide range of properties which bring all different types of guests our way. So we really, fine tune our approach on how to get the right guests to the right property that they will
Mhm,
hopefully book.
mhm. And you have to explain what because bunkie is very much a regional term. I think I don't even know if we use it really in Vancouver. I know what it is, but I think it might be more of an Ontario type term. So what exactly is a bunkie for people outside of
Yes.
Ontario?
I should have looked it up because it's just like saying cottage or camp or cabin
Mm,
or right. So bunkie is basically an off-grid structure. Some of them have heating, like a wood burning kind of mini fireplace in them, but they usually have no electricity, no water. It's basically like a wood structure in the forest with no amenities. So, yeah, and these is right now, like since January to now, we have 2 bunkies in this area. They're booked every weekend. It's like people love it. It's the experience, right?
It's
Sleeping,
camping, but it's
it's
camping
camping
with a structure.
with shelter. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And a bed. We do have beds in them, but that's pretty much it.
I love it. I love it. I think that
Mhm.
I've seen on your website, there's a great picture of one that just, oh, it's so sweet. So I really wanted to talk to you today because your portfolio is so vast in an area. You have these rural cottage country bunkies and other
Mhm.
properties, but then you also have some properties that are very urban in city centers. So I really
Mhm.
wanted to get into the dynamics there of managing properties that have very distinctive, like as you said, very distinctive ideal guests coming to them, but also in very different locations. So let's start about maybe understanding the lay of the land. So where sort of are your properties located?
So most of our properties are in the, I guess, Southern Ontario area. So we have some in Toronto, Niagara on the Lake, along Lake Erie, and then up north in Muskoka area, which is where a lot of cottages are. And also actually out towards Ottawa in Cobourg, we have another property. So we're kind of spread out, mainly Southern Ontario. And then I have the cottages in Nova Scotia along the South Shore. So that's geographically where we are.
Mhm.
And I guess how it led to that, it wasn't all by fluke. As investors ourselves, like we always kind of, you buy in different areas. And as we started looking into doing more property management and taking on more clients, we felt that for us, it was ideal to have some different types of properties because they all have different seasons. So if we only focused on cottages, we would really be crazy from like May to October, and then we'd have nothing to do all winter. Or, and for us also income would be, it would fluctuate quite a bit. So we thought, you know what, it's better to have a mix because then we'll have our more kind of urban properties in the city generally are more stable. And, you do have your peaks, but you're going to have income throughout the year. And then our cottages, we can focus obviously during the summer and high season, and then have other things to do in those off seasons. So that's why we decided to just kind of be open to whatever comes our way. From our company kind of like higher level standards, to us the guest experience is always key. And it may be a little different for the different types of properties, but that's always something we focus on. So regardless of the type of property or where it is, we can always have fun with the guests and do something unique and creative, to give them that great experience. So we found like high level, your guest experiences, your processes, your policies can all relatively be similar. And it doesn't really matter, right, where you're located or the type of property.
Well, you just answered one of my questions because I was gonna ask about, some of the operational challenges, but it sounds like, there aren't very many operational challenges managing, rural as well as urban properties in one portfolio.
No. Well, there can be. I'm not saying it's all roses. The one thing that is a bit or is difficult, I'll be honest, is obviously our teams on the ground, right? So we run a lot more, virtually. Obviously, I'm not running out to every property. So we have to have teams locally, right? For our cleaning, for kind of handy stuff, our runners, inspectors. So that is, I guess, one of the drawbacks of being more spread out is we have to count on a lot of different people to kind of help us with that operation side of it, and obviously then maintain our standards as well, right? So it's a bit trickier to do when you have like a group of 20 cleaners versus maybe 5. But it still works, and we just have to put a bit more effort into that area of the business and make sure things are where they need to be.
And with marketing, what do you find is unique? Like, what is effective uniquely with urban markets versus rural markets? What are the differences there that you're finding in your marketing?
Yeah, so we find for our urban properties, we rely a lot more on trying to stay close to like events happening and like different celebrations or, peak times.
Mhm.
And we leverage a lot of that content to help drive bookings. Whereas on the more rural side, it's really more about the location or the property because, if people are coming to a bunkie in the woods or a cottage, they may be 20, 30 minutes away from anything. So they're really coming to stay there. So that's when we really work to feature the properties a lot more versus like, hey, it's Canada Day weekend, right? So it varies that way. And we find that's been kind of a good way to separate them, but also reach, the guests we want.
And you mentioned that because of the differences, sort of each sort of property, each, I guess it wouldn't necessarily be each property, but each location would have a different ideal guest. So how are you managing all of these ideal guests, the properties, the locations? How are you managing that in your marketing?
Yeah, so I think we've been able to see some patterns now that we've been operating a couple of years on the type of guests that are coming through and the experiences that they're having or what they're looking for. We do spend a lot of time, we don't want to annoy our guests by like checking up on them all the time and over communicating, but we do try to pull out some nuggets whenever we can around what something we could do differently, things that maybe we could add or take away to get that feedback just to help really grow the property as a desirable spot. But then it also helps in our marketing around what we can focus more on to attract people. So that's really helped us keep fine tuning our approach on how we're talking about the properties.
Yeah, and
Mhm.
amenities. I guess amenities
Yes.
differ. Do they from rural to urban?
Oh, absolutely. The amenities, again, more about what to do right there, right? So anything by water, we have paddle boards, kayaks, canoes. We make sure there's, beach toys, kids' toys, all of that sort of thing. If there's any given more property or like acreage, we want fields or, volleyball, stuff like that can kind of keep people active, as well as stuff to do inside if it's raining, right? So nothing worse to be stuck someplace with a bunch of people and nothing to do. So wherever we can, a lot of, board games, all of those type of things. We have an arcade in one of our cottages that people love and even come back to. Like, I get requests sometimes saying, "Are my high scores still there? Because we're coming back and I want to see it." And then also hot tubs for the out of the way properties are always a big draw. They can be, a nightmare sometimes from the maintenance side of it, but everybody always wants a hot tub. So that's one of those amenities we try to put in a lot of those properties. And then for the city, more urban stays, we try to make sure that they're just equipped for the various guests that are coming through. So we find stuff like, and it's just little stuff like ironing board, your iron, like people are usually coming for work or for something. So they need all those things to just be able to get ready. Right. So, you're fully stocked kind of kitchen area. They don't necessarily care so much about cooking. So even though, all of our kitchens are usually quite equipped, we find our city properties, people don't care as much about that, but definitely just those little nice to haves around a really good hair dryer, the robes, things like that. People like those extra touches.
Yeah, I find that urban properties, the ovens don't really get used. So,
No.
it's one less thing that the cleaner needs to do is clean that oven every stay, which
Yeah,
is quite nice. So,
absolutely.
for people that are listening and thinking, I want to get into this, I want to look at doing more urban or more rural, what are some of the pros and cons of each market?
So I think some of the pros to urban, so as I mentioned, your seasonality, usually it's a bit more steady. So you're gonna have your peaks, but you can definitely be a bit more consistent, from an occupancy perspective. I think though sometimes there's less opportunity to really increase your rates and maybe maximize in that perspective because there's a lot more competition. Right. So you definitely need to be competitive to kind of keep that occupancy where it should be. Also, there's a lot of people right now looking to rent out their properties because they've bought in the last few years and don't want long-term tenants. They think, oh, switching to short term is the way to go. but it's often not. Like, we have actually quite a few people who come to us to talk about, us managing for them, and when we actually dig into it, they're better off getting a long-term tenant because it is expensive to get properties set up and fully equipped, and then, by the time you start seeing any revenue coming in, you have to be able to carry those costs. So it can be a big investment up front where the return might not be there or it might not be there for quite a while. And a lot of people may not really have thought that through. On the rural side, I guess to us, a lot of the pros are we love that we can make properties really unique. So whether it's just through how they get, decorated and we add all those extra touches to make them really fun and up those amenities, or also just in the way that where the all of these just kind of little extra things are within the property.
And with you being in Canada, a bit on the other side of Canada from where I am, with the regulations that are coming in, the sort of hard-hitting regulations that are coming in BC, I wanted to ask you, are there any trends that are coming in with regulations, legislation that is worrying you? And the second part of that question is urban or rural? Like where are your concerns?
Yes, they are actually really concerning us, and that's a bit why being spread out, again, makes us sleep a little better at night, so I am in Toronto, we do have a couple properties here, and, they haven't come down as hard as they have in BC, but they are crossing a line around what is really overreach versus like, let's just do the right thing for the economy and so on, right? So it definitely is worrying. And on the rural side, we are finding some of the municipalities, they're not banning things, they're coming out with some bylaws and some rules around getting licensing, which we're totally for. Like, we actually are rather be in municipalities where there already is that in place because then we know what the rules are, we can abide by them. We're pretty used to filling out license applications now, that's for sure. So that's fine, but it is scary when, some people's whole livelihood could be totally changed just by the government deciding, hey, no more STRs. When people have been renting out cottages and cabins and camp forever, like this is nothing new. And this is how a lot of people sustain having those type of properties. So we just try to make sure our clients and those we work with are well informed on what's the current state, what we see may be happening. We do try to pay close attention to the various things happening, which, there's a lot, again, given because every little municipality can just make up their own rules. So it can be a lot to kind of keep on top of. But yeah, again, it is a risk to being in this business, definitely, because we never know, right? Like with what's happened out in BC, like we don't know if one day we wake up and, hey, all of Canada is just shut down. So, we're doing as much as we can to try to speak up and message our municipalities and those, that can hopefully speak up when some of these things are coming to the table.
Yeah.
I think that's just
Yeah, and I can totally see how, the I'm gonna use a word that doesn't exist, the spread outness of your portfolio is working for you in the sense that if a harsher regulation comes in one area, you can pivot to the other areas, which is great. But then I guess on the other side, it's a lot more to keep up with and a lot more municipalities, cities to work with. Are you finding that you have a seat at the table in these areas?
there are a couple, yes. So we're actually finding in some of the actually along Lake Erie, so in Haldeman County, where we manage some properties, they've actually invited local hosts and those in the tourism industry to come and join together and like let's talk about how can we all work together to bring more tourists and how do we support, the rentals and the local businesses. So that was amazing to see. We do try to join some of the other meetings where possible, where there's not necessarily voices being heard, which is unfortunate. But wherever we can, we are definitely trying to speak up. That's for sure.
Oh, that's wonderful, and that's the type of area that you wanna be in,
Exactly.
and, yeah, that fills me with a lot of hope,
Mhm.
and I hope that there are more areas like that out there in the world because it's tourism. It's money for the local economies, and,
Yes.
it's very important, and
Mhm.
I think I by the time this airs there will be laws in place in BC, and this summer is gonna be very interesting when the tourism falls away because they have nowhere economical to stay. Anyway, I'll get off my soapbox. I wanna hear your advice, your wisdom, or like a mistake to avoid for new property managers aiming to that are coming into this, and they're not wanting to rely just on the OTAs for the bookings, but wanting to do more direct bookings. What would be a piece of advice or a mistake to avoid that you could share?
Sure. So I think on the advice side, I would say that really you have nothing to lose by putting together a website or, leveraging the PMS to do it for you and just having that available access to get direct booking. I think it is definitely been a game changer for us, which is great. And you can even just start small, like start a little Facebook group or a Facebook page for your property and just start to get the word out. It's definitely, keeping kind of giving you a bit of leverage, I think, for the future is how we see it, right? And you're
Mhm.
starting to get it out there, I think is just really great.
I completely agree, and it doesn't have to be fancy or time consuming. I had a call with a client today, and she was saying to me that she's been looking at her analytics on her website, and she said, since I've been telling everybody my website address, my traffic has increased." And I'm like, "Yes, this is exactly what we want. We wanna get people over to our website to book."
Mhm.
So yeah, it is that. It's getting the word out. That's exactly it. Wonderful. So while I have you, I need to ask you, what does direct booking success mean to you?
So to me, and this is maybe a bit corny, but it feels it's freedom. I feel just so in control of our business and the guests that we have that book with us directly. We feel a better connection with them because it's like, oh my God, they actually found us through our website. Like it was, again, like the person you spoke to. And we don't feel like we're working for the channel and, giving away that income as well. So to me, whenever I see those bookings come through that are direct, like I just get a little like, oh, I'm excited about this one. So we're hoping to grow that 20% for sure. And so
Mhm. Lovely. Wonderful. I know. Maybe we should start a direct booking success dance because I know that all of us across the world, when those bookings come through direct, means so much more than when a booking comes through an online travel agent. Well, Brianne, thank you so much for coming on today. What is your website? I'm going to put your links in the show notes for people to get it in contact with you, but can you tell us your website address?
yeah, so you can find us at junctionhousegetaways.com.
Wonderful. And I'll put your Facebook and Instagram social
Mhm.
links there. And you also have an offer for property owners, don't you? Do you want to share a
Yes.
little bit about that?
For sure. So if anybody is looking for some help or maybe a refresh look on the revenue and occupancy that their properties should be getting, we're offering a free analysis for folks. So I think I sent you a link so people can click on that and yeah, we can reach out and walk you through that.
Yeah, I'll put that link in the show notes. That is very helpful. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thanks.